Well, good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here. Amazing that it's mid-February. We have all the sunshine. Pinch me, I would have thought I was in Pittsburgh, but not California. But my name's Kevin Acklin. I'm the president of business operations for the Pittsburgh Penguins, a team that I rooted for growing up. And I actually grew up not too far away from here. I'm from South Oakland, Parkview Avenue. I grew up across the street from Dan Marino. In Shenley Park as a kid was my backyard. Mom raised us, me and my two brothers, by herself, and eventually went to this school right here behind us here at Central Catholic, third generation. In fact, I was telling before this was built, there was a hillside here that if you got detention, you had to clean the hillside. And so I'm not going to tell you how many times I cleaned the hillside, but it was more than once. Just so pleased to be here on behalf of the Penguins. And you know, we have an existing partnership with CMU that goes back several years on the data analytics side. But just a little bit about my background, just to inform you and your questions. So, again, I started my career here. In high school, I went to school. I was an undergraduate at Harvard. Went to law school at Georgetown, and actually I was a private equity lawyer in Boston. So I went to a firm called Ropes and Gray, where I was on the Bain Capital team for 5 years. The best thing about that place, that there were 3 guys on my floor named Winthrop. I never met a Winthrop in my life, but that was Boston in the late 90s. And then moved back to Pittsburgh, spent some time at Morgan Lewis, where I worked with a number of companies, actually some clients that coming out of Project Olympus. I became, kind of a local lawyer here in town. And then a good friend of mine was elected to city council, made a somewhat quixotic race for mayor. We ended up winning. His name was Bill Peduto, and then on election night, he asked me to come be his chief of staff. I told him no, that I'd help him interview people, and then I interviewed people. They all were terrible. So I ended up becoming the chief of staff to Mayor Peduto, which at the time was a dream job. For someone who grew up here in Oakland, my grandfather was a fire chief just up the street, and that element of public service. So, to be from a city like Pittsburgh, where the history of Carnegie and Mellon, the legacy of that last industrial revolution that seeded all these great institutions, our foundation community here, which is the most robust in the country, to work in City Hall and to think about some of the problems we were facing, which were incredible. Our combined sewer overflow problem with PWSA. We were hit the one day on a phone call that our lead lines, our lead levels were over. And we tried our best to sort of tackle those problems, but it was, a very informative and very transformational part of our city's history. And I know the mayor is now, I think, an adjunct here at CMU. And then I got a phone call. I left the city. I spent some time at Peoples Natural Gas, kind of working to solve that infrastructure problem that I really kind of fell in love with in a nerdy kind of way. And I got a phone call to go have lunch with Mary Lemieux. And I was hired by the Penguins as general counsel and COO. And then we were acquired last year by Fenway Sports Group, which I'll get into a little bit, and I was elevated to be team president. So now my second dream job. None of these jobs were anything I ever went for. People asked me, what was it like to become, a sport? I never thought I'd work for the Penguins. As I was telling Sean before, I played hockey at this school where my one accolade was that I led the league in penalty minutes. And it was actually a record that stood for 6 years after I graduated. That's how bad of a player I was. But coach would say, Ack, go make a friend with number 7. And I'd go on the ice and try to hurt people. But anyway, which is kind of what I've done in my career going on. So that's a little bit about me. And everything we do as a team is to really understand that, we're owned by Fenway, but we belong to the people of Pittsburgh. Sports, and I say this because it does motivate us every day, those of us who work for the Penguins from Pittsburgh. If you think about when I was a kid in the 80s here, when the economy collapsed and there was 40% unemployment, I lived on the edge overlooking, which was then the LTV mill site, which is now the 2nd Avenue, the Innovation. And mill workers used to park on my street and go down across, if you remember that little, they knocked it down since, but that little bridge that went over the parkway. And you remember how hard it was back then when you had all that unemployment and people without jobs. But it was really the sports. The Pirates and the Steelers were winning Super Bowls and championships, and we're now part of the DNA of the city. So we just like Carnegie Mellon, just like the Heinz Endowments, we view ourselves not only as a sports team, but an institution that not only has an obligation to be part of the city, to leverage what we do with business or with philanthropy, and I'll go into a little bit about that, but to sort of be part of the city's resurgence and comeback, and realizing that sort of the rebirth of Pittsburgh hasn't happened equitably. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is to, like we did at the city, is use the power of hockey and the platform of the Penguins to make a difference in the city. So if I didn't have that element, I couldn't go to work every day. My primary job is to win a Stanley Cup, obviously, which we're hopefully on a path for, but it's also to be a part of the city and to help make a difference. So what I want to talk about today a little bit is just to level set. So we now are part of a global enterprise called Fenway Sports Group, which includes all of the properties. Again, the Boston Red Sox, Nesson, which is a sports network in Boston, FSM, which is in New York, which is a sports management company, Liverpool, which I knew nothing about European soccer until 6 months ago. My kids, and I actually grew up here in Pittsburgh where I was a football and hockey guy. Spring Hill Company, which is a partnership with Maverick and LeBron James, and the Penguins as well. So this was a transaction that closed. We got a cold call August of 2021. No kidding. 3 weeks later, we had a term sheet. I went back to being a deal junkie. I'd sort of, in terms of driving the deal and getting it done, we closed by the end of the year. Mary Lemieux and Ron Burkle sold their controlling interest to Fenway. And it's helpful for us because now we're part of this enterprise where we have counterparts in Liverpool and in Boston where we share ideas and try to stay ahead of the curve in terms of entertaining fans. And so that's just sort of a level set where we fit right now. But we're still, here based in Pittsburgh. Just a history of this is a little bit of a history of Liverpool, of Fenway. The first acquisition in February of 2002 was when the Yawkey Trust was sold. Over the years, John Henry and Tom Werner. If you've seen the opening scene of Moneyball, which I referenced earlier, John Henry is the guy who was using data to sort of drive decisions in baseball. Hockey in the NHL, we're the guys who were picking players based upon whether or not they had an ugly girlfriend in the beginning of that. So their bet on the Penguins was really a bet on innovating and bringing data to the NHL and disrupting the way that we do things as a league and as a team. And we've already seen that impact. The history of this, I say, because I come full circle. January 22 is when we started as owners of the Penguins. The first deal I worked on at Ropes and Gray was the acquisition of the Red Sox, 20 some years ago. I knew nothing. I sort of came out of law school like most business lawyers, had no idea what EBITDA was at the time because they don't teach that in actually law school. I tell people who want to go to law school to go to business school because then you can tell lawyers what to do. In any event, so that's sort of my career come full circle. And then I don't know how well this comes across, but this is really no different than any business. We all are about winning. The number one, first and foremost, I have owners that want to spend to win, and want to play to win, and want to win. And that's the secret sauce in Liverpool and in Pittsburgh and in Boston. Focus on people and leadership, revenue generation, but that data-driven and analytic systems is really a core of what we're just trying to do in Pittsburgh. We've done a little bit on the hockey operations side. Sam Ventura was a graduate here of the program who has helped inform what we've done on the ice and has been part of Stanley Cup championships. We're now trying to replicate that in the front office as well. So again, this is a little bit of a kind of consultant speak for how we run our business as part of Fenway. But now let's talk about the Penguins. So this is sort of just two parts to this. First is I want to talk a little bit about how we're working with a number of CMU spin-out companies to help use our platform to grow their businesses and help bring them to market. But our vision, very simply, is to be the best organization in sports, not just in hockey. Respected for a culture of excellence on and off the ice. And our mission is to win the Stanley Cup, as I've mentioned, energize and inspire our fans, positively impact our community, and advance the game. And so everything we do as an organization follows one of those 4 pillars. We have metrics and KPIs that we follow to make sure that we're staying true to our mission. And I just want to go through a couple of examples of companies that we work with. And first and foremost is Yinscam. So Priya in 2008, that's her right there in the back, came to a game. As she tells it, she was too short to see the ice and thought about what it would be like to create something on a phone that people could follow. So this partnership started in 2010. By the way, I see these and long for my BlackBerry. I was a master at Brick Breaker. Remember that game? So I see those Blackberries there, and I'd go back in a heartbeat to one. And this has developed into a partnership that's continued today. If you come to a Penguins game, our app right now is powered through our partnership with Yinscam. We've developed a loaded ticket. Everything, you can order food, you can pay for your parking, all within the Yinscam app. The success of that, she's expanded her reach to 24 NFL teams all across the league. We've helped use that partnership, to drive relationships with other teams. But this is really one of the biggest innovations that we did that we still rely on heavily every day. Again, if you download our app, it's all using Yinscam technology that we're pursuing. Again, you can go on. We have videos that are plugged in there. This was helpful for us in terms of getting back from the pandemic. We went away from paper tickets, which we thought at the time was going to be crazy. People wouldn't be using tickets, but now using the app, it's all become part of what fans expect. Just a second company that we're working with is Covestro. Covestro was spun out of Bayer Material Science several years ago. The CEO at the time we met with, and we had a partnership with them. And in 2018, I remember the meeting well, and the idea was, couldn't we use our platform to come up with a make-a-thon in partnership with CMU, and then bring in some ideas and problems that we have in hockey that we could use the intellect of the students and the know-how of Covestro to come up with different ideas. And so we developed an entirely new dashboard system. So the dashboards in the NHL, if you went and dissected, it's steel and plywood and hard plastic. They don't give. If you remember, Jake Gensel, our top line left winger, went into the boards several years ago behind the net and hit it in such a way that it was like a car crash going 40 miles an hour. And so using the conversation with Covestro coming out of the Make-a-thon, we developed a whole new set of boards that have the same, I don't know the technical terms, so don't laugh at me, but the puck bounces the same when you hit up against it, but when a body hits against it, there's more give to it. And so we've adopted that. We have a prototype that we've developed that's in our practice facility up in Cranberry. And then we're working with Athletica, the top producer of boards across the world, candidly, in deploying this technology. So again, that's the secret sauce of working with a company, using our platform that amplifies and tries to find a solution, using their product, and then bringing it to market and helping to commercialize it. And so the second year, we developed with Covestro a design for goalie mass to absorb the impact. We noticed that, a lot of our goalies, including our own, Matt Murray at the time, had a number of concussions from the impact. And so we're working with Bauer to make that. So we have our third year coming up here soon. I think we had a bit of a pause for the pandemic, but that's another type of relationship that we built, using our platform. So that's just another example. So that's a picture of the boards. Again, at the bottom where there's the ice dam, there's not a lot of give, but using technology and design, we've been able to reduce the deflection by up to 450%, which is, again, getting this adopted across the league is really our charge right now, because player safety is becoming, when you're spending tens of millions of dollars on players, you got to protect that investment and create a safer game. Much more so even kids who are learning to play. It's important for us to make sure that the game is safe. I remember as a kid growing up and playing at a rink somewhere in Westmoreland County that had cinder blocks is boards. That's how old I am. So anyway, explains a lot, right? I see Kit in the back. So this is a new one that we did this year. So obviously with the robotics industry exploding here in Pittsburgh, we had an idea about, we called up literally Zamboni, which is a company that makes Zambonis, which clean our ice. And we sat down with them and we had a couple conversations with a number of different companies and ended up doing a deal with Locomation, that we launched last year, where we created the world's first autonomous Zamboni. And that's something that we're already deploying on the ice. Again, a little bit of an innovation, probably technology that was developed here in 1978 at CMU that we're now finally just getting to deploy. But again, a cool way to sort of elevate and amplify the work that's being done by a Pittsburgh-based company. The folks at Zamboni loved it, and that we were able to sort of show this. Thank God we don't have unionized Zamboni drivers, or we would have probably had a strike. But in that regard, this is something that we did just last year, using that technology that's already at work at the arena. Another one we did with Carnegie Robotics. This was, I remember during the pandemic, we went down and met with those guys and said, hey, what can we do together? And then as we were walking around, one of these things sort of almost ran me over. So we have, this is actually was a couple weeks old. We have an autonomous cleaning scrubber that goes through the arena. Part of this was back in the day in 2021 when we're trying to get fans back in the arena and making people feel comfortable about being clean and the like. But what I'll tell you is this thing was magic last week, because that you're a hockey team in the middle of Appalachia when your number one grossing event is what? Who can guess? Monster Jam, right? Where we have 15 tons of dirt in the arena and these big trucks go and they spit dirt everywhere. And this thing worked overtime to clean up. The back hallway was covered in mud. It is our number one. Mario asked a few years ago, why do we do this in the arena? And I showed him the numbers that we get from Monster Jam. So in any event, but again, using our platform to elevate what the folks at Carnegie Robotics were doing. And this is another example. Final example, which actually is a hard one, fifth season. Again, when they first came to fruition, again, this is not one using technology, but using, our brand, that our players, we were buying, the official greens designation of the Penguins, and we were sourcing a lot of our healthy foods from fifth season. Again, using that platform to amplify their work, helping them get into market. Unfortunately, that didn't end well, obviously, for reasons other than, us and our relationship. But again, one example of using the publicity around when you do a deal with us, people pay attention to it. The sort of intangible value of being associated with the team is something that we take seriously. And so if there are companies here that we can do something like this, Sean and I have talked about it. We're open to that. We'd like to be part of, CMU has always been ahead of the curve with its tech transfer office, encouraging, researchers and professors and commercializing, technology. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, I've worked with a number of companies coming out of Project Olympus and the like. So we want to do this more. And again, this isn't just sort of for fun. These are real world problems and opportunities that we can kind of collaborate with companies. So I want to pivot just for a second, if I could, for just a couple more minutes, just to talk about the social impact side, because again, leaving City Hall, where you wake up every day and you put on a cape and at least you feel like you're trying to help a city. You can't just go work for a hockey team. You got to feel like you're still making an impact. And so a lot of what we do is through our foundation. And so we kind of have four big pillars, but we use that same level of effort and amplification in elevating things that we do in the community. So again, wellness, youth hockey, education, and community are our four big elements of our community impact, which I'll go to in a little bit. Hockey is kind of an obvious one, but what I'll tell you is hockey is the whitest sport there is, and there's no reason why we can't be more diverse in not only how we're approaching players, but also fans. But as someone who grew up playing, It is also one of the more expensive sports. The access, the barriers to entry are high. And if you don't have a parent that can schlep you around to rinks all over creation. I'll also tell you that until recently, we did not have a sheet of ice in the city. And as for someone from Oakland who grew up playing at Shenley Park, again, indoor ice suitable for hockey. So the Armory ice rink, which I'll tell about a little bit, when I ran the city with the mayor, I was trying to get the Penguins to sort of invest in Armory. Now I am the Penguins, and so we're doing it. And so, and we're doing it for all the right reasons, and I'll show you the impact that we've had even in our 2 years of existence there. So just a couple of examples. There's the Armory. I mean, if you look at this thing, it just screams ice rink, right? Again, it's right in Shady Side on Emerson, on the edge of some of the neighborhoods in the city, in the East End, that don't have access to the game. And so what the Penguins were doing previously is we have a facility in Cranberry that we were literally busing kids through a relationship with East End Cooperative Ministry, bus them an hour to Cranberry. They're on the ice for an hour and an hour back. No surprise, we probably had 10 or 15, players of color who were coming to that program. Why? But I mean, who would do that for that 3-hour commitment? So we brought it's kind of like a field of dreams. We brought the ice to the city. We now have hundreds of kids from the city that are playing. We talked earlier about what this has meant for the community above and beyond. Chatham University has been a partner. They've been able to grow their program. We're bringing back a hockey program in the Pittsburgh Public Schools. Again, maybe we'll draft a kid out of Homewood who learned to play hockey here. That would be a dream. But in the meantime, we're learning the intangibles of the game that go with, learning the hard work, the teamwork that all go into the game. So the guys love this, meaning the players. We had a practice there. What is that, in December? I remember it was freezing cold, which PPG Paints Arena isn't as cold. I mean, this is like real cold. I think it was like 15 degrees out that day, but I know Sid coming off said we would do this again, and having the kids there was great. So anyway, so this is one thing that we're doing. We're looking to make it permanent with the city. It's still a city-owned asset, but everything that happens there we pay for with our foundation and with our partners. So again, one innovation that we've done. The second is the Willie O'Ree Academy, and it's important, as I mentioned, we have to be very intentionally and very anti-racist on how we've approached the game. And so Willie O'Ree, if folks don't know, was the Jackie Robinson of hockey who integrated the sport for the Bruins. Years ago, in the 60s, we partnered with him, and now we have a program. This is built for players of color who are in the game, who don't have a support network. We just had our Black History Month game on Saturday, and one of our top defensemen is P.O. Joseph, who you guys may know, who's not only a great player, but can tell you stories just recently of what it's like to be a black player in the NHL, where you still get names hurled at you. So we're in growing up that way in a traditionally white sport. So again, we're using the power of the team to wrap ourselves around these players who are in the game, to give them extra attention, to give them mentorship, to give them training from Penguins players and coaches, and build this model. Dick's Sporting Goods DSG is a partner of ours. We were nominated for an ESPY for this program, one of 4. We didn't win, but one of 4 clubs in sports. I think we lost to the Denver Broncos, who were taking guns off the street. But this is something we're very passionate about, and that we're hoping to grow as we build out the funnel of growth of the game. Reading Champions is one example where we're in the neighborhoods, we're in schools trying to make an impact. We have a partnership with U.S. Steel that we're working on for reading enrichment programs. And we also did an investment with U.S. Steel in the Braddock Carnegie Library, the historical home of U.S. Steel. I know David Burritt, the CEO, and I were down there just a couple months ago, where we made that type of investment to kind of bring back that Carnegie library to the community. And I think that might be, and then finally, as we kind of recover from the pandemic and see all the impact that it's had on kids with mental health service, we have a partnership with UPMC that we're pursuing for a Cool Zone, which is a Penguins branded program that we have in a number of locations, mental health facilities across the region to sort of make it easier for kids to have accessible access to mental health resources that are there. So that's just kind of a summary. That's what it looks like, hopefully, in the playoffs this year, if I intend to stay employed. But I just kind of wanted to go through. I know I threw a lot at you guys, but would love, Sean, to kind of go through with you and have a structured conversation.
Yeah, let's have
awesome.
a conversation for sure.
Great.
So I can just move this. We'll put this behind you so that you cannot forget what you're doing all this for. All right, so I'm going to start us off because I run CSL, so I get to ask the first question. That's how it works. But then I do want you guys to ask questions as well. So if you have questions, let's just start raising hands just so I can have a sense and go to you all as well. So I thought that was great on lots of levels, and in many ways I felt like it was a great sort of like starting very high level and going to then some very practical things that you're doing. I want to finish I want to kind of go back out that way, but let's start with this, like with these collaborations with the startups, and then we'll get to the social impact thing in just a moment. But these collaborations with the startups, Kevin, like my instinct is an organization like the Penguins could probably do a lot of this yourself if you wanted to, sure. But it probably is one of those things where it works better in partnership than with these groups. And so how do you guys think about this sort of build versus buy decision when looking at startup collaborations?
It's a great question. Is this on?
Yep.
You can hear it. So first of all, there are two main points. First is that these are real problems. Like when we sat down with Priya, this wasn't sort of charity. Yep. We weren't thinking of ways to sort of amplify companies. We have real problems that we're looking to solve in sports and business. And so, that's always where it starts. And I would say, secondly, that it's the concept of leverage. If we're leveraging an institution like Carnegie Mellon that already has an institution and a platform for these companies to come together, then it's better than toiling on our own. So, and then we're not opposed to using our power, whether, I'm on the board of governors of the NHL, to bring that concept and share it. It's sort of kind of an open source. We think that in problem solving for sports, other teams are facing the same types of issues that we're having, and we're willing and open and ready to share it with other companies. And that's certainly the model that we followed is kind of proof of concept. We would be an early adopter and be willing to put our money where our mouth is, for that concept, and then try to amplify it and help commercialize it. It's also fun. I mean, it's a way for us to be embedded into the city and support other institutions that support us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it seems like there's kind of two paths in, right? There's things like Rethink the Rink, which is like, here's a problem we know we have, help us solve it. And then there's some of these that maybe are a bit more serendipitous. Priya's like, hey, I couldn't see the rink. Right. Maybe we should. So the first one is probably pretty obvious. Like as you launch these challenges, how to do it. What's the best way for entrepreneurs who are thinking, I've got something for the Penguins? What's the best way to sort of bring you problems that you may not even be aware that you have?
Call Sean. No, I mean, that's sort of the challenge. And we talked about this before, is that there are ways to solve problems in sports, but there's also the adoption problem. The sports are still governed by knuckleheads who sometimes don't want, they sort of know what they know, and they're resistant to whether it be data and the like. So I think, those of us on the business side who are trying to drive innovation in sports, we were talking about this before. I mean, we could host different events. We can bring our market and our department heads here and do a session where we can sort of say, these are the problems we're facing. Does any have ideas? And so I think that would be an easy thing that we can do, spend a day together and then come out with a handful of ideas and follow-ups.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a great way to do it.
All right, we'll book it. We'll do it.
Awesome.
That sounds awesome. So you do that publicly, because then there's no way to back down. All right, so we've got a commitment, Sean. It's on the books.
And knucklehead, I wasn't talking about anyone in particular.
I got it.
For the record.
I got it.
Lots of knuckleheads.
So let's talk about the city, and then we'll go to some questions from the audience as well. But so I think that's actually how you and I got to know each other. I think I told Bill I would give him money because I was sure he wouldn't win. And then you guys won. That was not how that was supposed to work out. I got in a little bit of trouble on that one, but that's okay.
We all did.
Yeah. But you guys did a lot of amazing things. I mean, the whole team there. But when you look at Pittsburgh today, like, you talked about some things you're already doing, but if you were to kind of talk about what your hopes for the city are going forward, Kevin, what are you hoping for?
Well, I can say that, Mayor Gainey was also a close friend. I worked on his race when he ran first for State House. So this is, there was this progressive movement, not just progressive in political terms, but progressive in thinking differently about the city, where it had been constrained for so long from a machine politics, sort of elevating people, and I grew up in that, candidly. My grandfather was involved in politics as a kid, and I kind of rebelled against it. I was a Republican for a hot minute, and then, Elsie Hillman was actually my political champion, who I got to really, when I came back to Pittsburgh, got to know Elsie very well, and then we were like the last of the moderate Republicans that existed. But in any event, when you think about, I used to say with the mayor, like, if you think about levels of politics, whether it be national or local or state, there's nothing like working in a city, because you're closest to the problems that face regular people, and you have the access to solutions. And so the way that we thought about things was, I know that we used to sort of, the analog would be to we'd open a drawer, and you'd look in the drawer and there'd be like a problem. Okay, we'll solve that later. But it wasn't, we didn't make decisions based upon, winning an election. It was sort of problem solving. And then once you solve the problem, how do you make it durable?
Yep.
And so one thing was, whenever we wanted to change policy, we made up this concept of an executive order, completely made it up. The whole idea that doesn't really exist under city law. But the idea was, we're going to have an executive order of the mayor, and we're going to issue it and put a number to it. So if a future mayor wanted to change it, they had to sort of flip it and reverse it. So that durability in local governance, and when you kind of figure out like the solution to a problem, and it takes a while to get there, then a new mayor can come along and sort of undo it. And
Yep.
so and that's what we did. I remember when we had the lead issue with PWSA, there was actually a state law that said that PWSA was not allowed to replace the lead lines beyond the curb box to your house. And so, because it was at the time meant to be competitive with local plumbers. And so there was actually a state law that prohibited us from replacing those lines. And so what we did was, we created an executive order saying we're going to replace the lines. And I said, I want that lawsuit. We're going to go, if you're going to tell homeowners in Homewood that they need to spend $15,000 of their own money to replace lines on their side of the curb box, then sue me, because I want to be on the front page saying that the mayor is going to be spending public resources to keep people safe. So those were the kind of things that we did. I think, all in the interest of the public. And, it's a fun job. I mean, in a lot of ways, in terms of, because you're close to, what the solutions that face regular people.
Yeah, so you did a lot of great stuff, and Bill did a lot of great stuff,
Yeah.
and Ed's doing a lot of great stuff now. But just put your hat on, what would you love to see? What's the things that you'd love to see happen to
Going
make Pittsburgh
forward,
even better?
Yeah. I think the culture of innovation is got to be having an open, more transparent. I mean, Pittsburgh is still somewhat of a closed economy. It's who you know versus what you can do. Moving forward, capital flees where it's difficult to invest, whether it be through entitlements with development. People, we're in an increasingly, mobile capital will go, like electricity, to where there's least resistance. And I'm not saying lower the barriers to entry and sort of lay down, but right now we're at the point where some areas of the city have sort of grown, like the Strip District, and other areas have continued to not grow, and they're pretty much aligned with the racial makeup of Pittsburgh. And we got to be honest about that. We have to say that we're going to be very intentional about having equitable development in areas that have been, heretofore, discriminated against and candidly, taken advantage of. So yeah, I think going forward is and then leveraging our institutions and realizing that Pittsburgh is a city where you can assemble the decision makers in one room. You can get the head of every institution, whether it be Farnham or the head of, Pat for now at Pitt, or the head of all the universities and major companies, into a room and come up with a solution. Now, the last time I did that, that's what was the Amazon pitch. I never want to get in the room with those people again. That was one of the worst experiences of my life when we kind of competed for Amazon and that race to the bottom.
We all have PTSD from Amazon, I think. Yeah.
But truthfully, other cities don't have that. They don't have the ability. We're not a vertical city, where So in any event, I'm hopeful that, and we as a team want to be part of that. You know, when companies are coming here and looking at Pittsburgh, you know, we'll get a phone call from, you know, the tech council or from the conference, and we'll play our role, you know, to show that, you know, that we're a real town that has a quality of life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think the Exchange Pittsburgh people didn't technically feed you that answer, but I think there's good work going on there in that back corner of the Schwartz Center right now.
It.
So cool. So we'll open up for a couple of questions, and then I'm gonna grab the last question too, because again I have the mic. But questions from the audience. We got one in the back there. Oh wow. Hey.
Hi.
It's on.
Okay, great. So thanks, Kevin, for the talk. My question is about the Fenway Sports Group. I find it fascinating. Like, how does cross-collaboration work when you have employees there who are probably Red Sox fans working for the Red Sox? So I'm going to guess that they're Bruins fans as well. So then how does that actually play out? It seems like an inherent conflict of culture.
It's very delicate. And try playing the Bruins in an outdoor game at your owner's Fenway Park, which we did just in December. So great question. I'll tell you that Pittsburgh and Boston are very similar in a lot of ways. Our fan bases are similar. We're a gritty fan base. We love to win. We love to hate Philadelphia like they hate New York. So we kind of have that. And you know, well, two things. First, the transition. When we sat and thought about this, and this deal was underway. Actually, I'll tell you a quick story. Sorry, all over the place. But when the deal was happening, I went up to Boston it was the ALCS, and I told my wife, Katie, that I have to go on a very secret mission to Boston because we were still negotiating the deal. And they were playing the Astros, and I walked into Fenway Park, and we were all still masked up, and I had a Penguins mask on. And as I walked in, Sam Kennedy, who's the CEO of the Red Sox, like, you better flip that around. So I wasn't even thinking. And we had a meeting about the term sheet, and we hadn't even got the deal done. And then I went down and sat in John Henry's seats, which were down behind home base. And before the first pitch, Katie, my wife, texted me, said, "Hey, Mr. Secret Super Agent, man, you're on national TV. Like, you have the biggest Irish head that exists." And she's like, "All I can see is your head." So it's a true story. And then later on, a reporter, when we announced in December, was like, "I saw you on TV in Boston back then." Anyway, what I'll say is in transition, we thought hard about how do we transition, you know, this organization, the Penguins, who was in bankruptcy in 1999, that has had a storied career with 5 Stanley Cups, 3 most recently. It was very much bottoms up. You know, when we announced it, I went to the hallway and I said, "Look, you know, meet your counterparts in Boston and Liverpool, learn from them, make those connections. It's not going to be a top-down transition. I'm not going to dictate to you." I did that with the city. I led the transition, you know, for Mayor Peduto, where, you know, we had to sort of put teams together and ideas. But I think that was probably the first step. We allowed our people to authentically meet their people, no matter who they root for. Your question about Boston, though, is in the Bruins, and this is public, but Fenway tried to buy the Bruins, and you know they were denied. The Jacobs family is a storied owner of the Bruins for multi-generations, and so I don't think there was any love lost between the Red Sox and the Bruins, but we navigated pretty well. When we were up there for the Winter Classic that we played at Fenway on New Year's Day, or the 2nd of January, all of the Fenway people, if you remember, Crystal, no one had any black and gold on. I was kind of offended at first, but they all wore like neutral colors, so I'll get my revenge.
All right, maybe one more question.
Black and gold would have been fine because we're both black and gold. And I don't know if folks know, when the Penguins initially were started in 1967 until the late 70s, we're blue. We were a blue team. And in the 79, I alluded to it earlier, when the Pirates and Steelers were winning, you know, we became a black and gold town. So the Penguins tried to change our colors. The Bruins tried to block it back in the late 70s. And there was a club from the 20s called the Pittsburgh Pirates. If you saw our Winter Classic jerseys, that's the jersey that we chose. That was the Black and Gold Club from our lineal history that used to play up the street here at the Duquesne Gardens back in the 20s, which actually is right across from St. Paul Cathedral. In the 70s, the Penguins used that to say to the Bruins, no, we're gonna be black and gold, and the commissioner at the time signed on for it. So that was the reason. That P that you see, that's the team that we celebrated. Yes, sir.
Go ahead with the mic. Yeah, and then we'll go to you.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question. So, you said that Boston, Pittsburgh, pretty similar, but the fact of the matter is that finances for baseball and for hockey are much different. And
yes.
So, the way I kind of look at it is there since Fenway kind of has this umbrella with Liverpool and the Sox and whatever, it's kind of like you have R&D and marketing within this building, so they're kind of jockeying for resources because there's been a lot of kind of from Sox fans, they've been like they aren't pumping enough money into the team. And so do you guys kind of feel like there's any like antagonism towards regards to resources with the Sox management or any of that type of stuff, or what's going on there?
So great question. The Fenway, so the Red Sox, I think their salary last year was over $300 million. They're one of the top spenders in the league. The Pirates are very different. Liverpool is similar. There are transactions for Liverpool players where they pay the player and then there's a transfer fee that rivals what my salary is. The NHL is a hard salary cap system, so I can only pay the players $82.5 million, which is a lot of money, but it's not when you compare yourselves to other. So when I first explained in the deal how the economics of hockey work, which is a salary cap where the hockey-related revenue, which is every dollar that's produced in the league, is captured, HRR they call it. That number right now is about $5 billion. That's split in half. Half goes to the players, half goes to the owners. And the part that goes to the players, that's what defines the salary cap every year. And so there's this equity system that hockey has, which is different than these other sports, which are just races to pay these ridiculous amounts of money. So I think with that in mind, like our labor costs are sort of fixed. They fluctuate based upon how the league is doing, and it's already rebounded from the pandemic. But we don't feel any competition. If anything, we're able to utilize we're sort of free riding, if you think economically, on what their investments have been in data analytics, in pricing. We're able to sort of borrow that for free. And that's been the path.
All right, I think we got one more, Sean. We got one more question, and then we
A couple more.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I just want to make sure you get to hockey night.
It's Raul, right?
Yes.
Kevin, good to see you.
Given your highly diverse experiences,
It goes with my ADD.
what didn't you know 15 or 20 years ago that you really wish you had and would be of general interest to the rest of us?
He said it. Go to business school instead of law school. We're gonna put that on posters all over the building here. Kevin Acklin says, "Go to business school, not to law school."
Do you agree that's the one?
No, sure.
I kind of the advice I give is what I didn't know is what I didn't know, and that is to just do what the work that's in front of you. And my career has always been whatever project's in front of me, it happens, and then. I have friends in different careers who have sort of tried to get to somewhere. They want to be a certain position, or they're going. And in my mind, that's always been a distraction. If you have a job that you're doing, you kind of keep your head down and you do it. And then when you pick it up, you're going to have opportunities. And I just sort of fell into that. I didn't. My career has always just been to do the work in front of me. Like I haven't updated my resume since 1999. I've never. But you know what I mean? I've just always got a phone call for my next job. Over that this will be my last one. But I've never had a career path that I actually sought after. I just did the work that was in front of me, and that's something I didn't really. I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's the best I can give you.
Hi, my name is Eric. I'm a MBA student at Pepper. Kind of curious, one of the areas I feel like the NHL is straggling behind some of the other big four is in kind of the social media and digital media space. Hockey traditionally has had more or less outspoken captains Crosby being one of them, McDavid, they don't speak much.
Yeah.
Compared to, your baseball or basketball, do you feel like it's more of the foundation's responsibility to mesh with the community, or
players.
get more players like Zegers coming in that are doing a lot more social media and interacting with the community?
So that's a great question. And to your point, when we closed the deal with Fenway, it was late. It was actually, I tempted the deal gods because I had Crystal this is my chief of staff, Crystal Joyce from Greenfield. So we keep it local here on the other end of the run. We had jerseys made with all the owners of the teams, and I put a 21 on the back. And the deal was supposed to close on January 31st, 2021, and it almost didn't. And we had all these jerseys made, and I had Henry, and I had John Henry's name, and I had Werner. Well, LeBron James is also an owner in Fenway. So we had the biggest jersey that we could find, which is a goalie jersey. And we closed the deal. Crystal sent them out. 2 weeks later, my social media person ran into my office and said, LeBron James, the Lakers just tweeted LeBron James in a John Marino jersey, which is number 6. And of course I knew that wasn't John Marino. That was the one we sent him. So immediately it went viral. It was all, maybe you guys have seen this, of LeBron James with a Penguins jersey. It is so skin tight on him. That was he's such a big human being that it was literally, it's a goalie jersey. It's like, you think of a goalie, but it's very wide. It's the largest jersey we had. We should have taken a picture of it. I held it up before we sent it. But the point is, like that one influencer, like who has that following, we don't have that in hockey. And so you're right. The foundation and our efforts as a club are to provide better opportunities for the players to become more involved. But hockey players are different. A lot of them leave home at 13, 14 years old. They go to live with billet families. Sid left home and moved to this small town, Faribault, Minnesota, where he played hockey for a couple of years. And then they're very quiet by their nature. It's just a different type of sport. Now, there's a good side of that. They're not really getting into trouble like some of the other, leagues have. But the other side is that they're a little bit more, I don't want to call them recluse, but they're a little bit more private in how they do things. So, but they're great people. And I can tell you stories. Most of what's done is done without fanfare. Sid does things not for it's kind of do good when no one's looking. And so a lot of that happens. I think as a league, we have to do a better job. Now, if anybody saw, I was at the All-Star game a couple weeks ago. They sometimes try too hard. Like they had Sid in a dunk tank. Like, I don't know, that was a little weird, but they were trying too hard, but the sport is just a difference. It's a fast sport. But I think we can do a better job connecting the players with the fan base. And again, as I talked to earlier, making sure that we're diversifying, not only because it's the right thing to do, but if we want to survive as a sport, we have to make ourselves more attracted to more than just the kind of Northern Canadian, Northern U.S. Fan base.
I think she's been trying to ask a question for like 4 questions. So,
hi,
Kevin. Hi, Joanne. I really enjoyed your theme about data and sort of where you see the sport going, and I think the other 4 major leagues have done a really good job of bringing that high and analytic perspective to the viewer sitting at home, so you can really understand the sport. I'm a Tottenham Hotspurs fan. Glad to know you're following the EPL. Probably the wrong team, but that's okay.
This year it was.
Yeah.
2 years ago it was great. We just kept winning.
Yeah.
Although the offside thing really got me because it's like a moving offside that took me a while to get that through my head.
Well, I'm a new Penguin fan, 5 years, so I've had to adopt your blue line and the rules over
the
here.
rigid.
Is there a team or a league that you see that's doing something really innovative that drives a lot of your data decision making, or is it something that you're home growing and sort of iterating?
So the NBA, I think, on everything from social equity to fan engagement, the Golden State Warriors are sort of known as the top team that has really adopted data. I think I have fewer than 10 people that work in analytics on the hockey and non-hockey side. I think they have 100. And so, we've, I think the NBA from a data incorporation perspective has been years ahead, I think, of all other clubs in a lot of ways. And again, connecting with the fan base. Baseball, of course, is a data-driven sport, but it's prone to producing data. There's a pitch. There's a cadence to it. Hockey is so fast, and a lot of the data, and we talked about this earlier, that's being developed is to generate revenue from proposition bets. And I'm not a fan of betting on sports, but that ship sailed a long time ago. People in hockey, you can bet on wins and losses, but you can also bet on who scores the first goal and where the goal is. And there's only so much kind of interesting sort of propositions where the NFL and Major League Baseball, the game is more prone toward producing data that can be bet on. And so anyway, I think, we're probably wedded to the legalization of betting on sports has driven a lot of our interest in data, the puck and player tracking that happens. Now, from utilizing it from, Tristan Jarry, our starting goalie, will be playing tonight. He's been out with an upper body injury recently, kind of using analytics to sort of predict injuries and the kind of human performance element is an interesting thing. It still feels a little like pseudoscience in a lot of ways, and I'm speaking not as an expert in any regard, but that's one area where I think we can get better. Hockey strides, so that whole human performance element of using data in terms of how to shoot, where the pucks are being shot from, and how that produces points. But right now, the data game in Major League Sports is largely driven by betting. And that's just not a fun thing for me. And I'm an outlier. I mean, I think it'd be more interesting to kind of player safety when you think about head injuries and concussions that NFL players have assumed for a long time. Using data to keep these players safe so they can have a life after sports. That's a much more interesting use of the data that I'd love to be part of.
All right, and I think in the interest of making sure there's a little bit of time for people to just kind of hang out and talk, I think we're going to call it now because you do need to get to an actual hockey game.
We have puck drop at 7:08.
Yeah,
so not like I have anything to do with the game tonight. I just stand there.
It's 7:08, not like 7. Not just
it's
about
7:08.
O'clock.
It's 7:08. The puck drops at 7:08.
Okay, so in the interest of making sure people have a few minutes to kind of hang out and network, let's go ahead and call it here. But I do want to say this, Kevin. I think it's great to have people in leadership positions in the big organizations in Pittsburgh that are committed to working with startups. Dave Mawhinney's in the back of the room with me. Dave and I have been talking for a long time to a lot of executives about the need for the large corporates in town to work with the startups. And there's not a great history across the board on that. And you guys have done a great job. So thank you for leading the way. Well, thank you.
And we have those relationships with corporate Pittsburgh that can kind of be the fulcrum to open that door. And anyway, to your earlier question, if we can create a durable and systematic way to provide students and professors here access to that, I'm on board. Awesome.
Amazing. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Please join me in thanking Kevin.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. That was good.